Good morning. I'm sitting in a truck stop parking lot eating my breakfast in the backseat of my car before I hit the road today. I'm about an hour and a half south of Madison, Wisconsin, where I'm gonna go see Ace tonight, and I'm really super excited. I know this, trust me, I'm excited. I'm just not, I'll show it later, probably more. I'm kind of anxious too because I'm doing the backstage tour and I get to meet them, do the pre-show cheer, get a poster signed, and just whatever. They're posting pictures on Instagram, and I know they're like an hour and a half away from me, and it's really kind of anxiety inducing because I'm like, what did I sign up for again? How old am I? What am I doing? And that brings me sort of to the point of this video. Why am I going on this trip? Why am I driving all over the country and seeing a group? And I have a backstory, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, and I'll see if I can try to explain some of it now. It's kind of long, so if you want to double time the speed at this point, feel free, and you can get the sped up version, since that seems to be a thing on videos now, is speeding them up. Anyway, so last September I turned 50, and with getting older also means my parents are getting older. And since 2021 Thanksgiving, my mother has been in a skilled nursing facility. She'd had complications from a surgery and was unable to go home. She'd had a breathing tube and a feeding tube and lots of other things, and so she'd been in a skilled nursing facility. My father, who turned 80 a few weeks after I turned 50, he in September had a fall and broke his wrist, which doesn't seem like that big a deal, but he had some difficulties recovering in the hospital. He became very confused. Ended up spending so long in bed that he lost sort of his mobility to a degree. Like, he could walk, but he needed a walker, and he was very unstable. So after breaking his wrist, then he had those issues. So I found myself flying to Florida, where they live, and where they've lived since 1987. Having to fly from my home in Connecticut to Florida to assist, because my father lived alone with my nephew, who he raised. So I'll say my nephew, but keep in mind that my nephew was raised by my parents, so just keep that in mind. And he was 17 when all this was happening. And nothing begrudging a 17-year-old male, but you can't expect them to. 17-year-olds their brains aren't done growing, and it's hard for them to take care of their parents. So I went down to Florida, and that was the first of several falls that my father has had since last September, and needed me to go down to Florida and arrange care. I have legal rights and responsibilities to make decisions for them and to get them care. It's just kind of hard to do from, another state and far away. So I'm going back and forth to Florida, and I think his last fall was like just after Christmas. So I'd gone down for that. So that was January, and I set him up with a home health aide, someone to help him at home, had everything in place. And then I get a call before President's Day weekend, which is a long weekend for me. I work in schools, so I get a long weekend. I get a call at the start of it from my mother's nursing facility that she wasn't oxygenating properly, and they were sending her to the hospital. So they get to the hospital, and they're like, yeah, there's some fluid in her lungs. We're gonna drain that and check it. And I'm like, all right. So I had this long weekend. I'm like, I'll come down and see how things are doing, because my dad can't, he's having trouble himself. So I'll go down and see what's going on with my mom. Well, I have the trip planned. I have my airline ticket purchased. And then I get a call from the hospital that I needed to come right away, and she probably wasn't gonna make it. So I got on the first flight I could. I mean, obviously there's a lot more to it, but the short of it is, change all my plans, get to Florida, get to the hospital. She's already medicated so much that she can't talk to me. But I basically stay at the hospital for a day and a half until she passes away. So my mother passes away. make arrangements. And my father sort of pulls it together for that. And he's at the hospital with her too. There's 3 of us. My older sister and I, my father. Well, my nephew, he's there also. But I basically just stay in the hospital, like go straight from the airport. There's a funny story, maybe I'll tell you later, about part of the trip, but go straight to the hospital and basically stay in with her room until she passes. And you know, we did that thing you do when we were sitting around. She can, you know, they say she can hear us. She's got so much morphine and everything. She can't talk, but they tell us she can hear us, so we sit around telling stories. And inevitably, we start telling stories about how she always used to take us to concerts when we were little. Like, even if she didn't like a group, she always liked music. But I'm telling you, growing up in the 70s with my mom, there was a lot of Barry Manilow, a lot of Neil Diamond. We all have stories about that. But she always encouraged us to listen to music and go to concerts. And if we could ever go to a concert that there were seats for, like, you know, not general admission, pretty much she would go. My older sister is 5 years older than me, so my mom saw a lot of things with her, and I won't remember them all. But she took me to my first concert when I was in 6th grade. So what was I, 11? 10, 11, 12. She took me to an arena to see a group that was popular back then called Foreigner. I only knew like one song by them, but my sister told me it would be cool, I feel like. So I was like, she says it's cool, so I'll go. And it was alright. Went to that concert. And then my mom's seen David Bowie a couple times, the Rolling Stones, Sting. She went with me when I went to see The Cure. She would go see them with me, and that was a huge part of my adolescence, was sort of alternative and gothic music. So she's seen The Cure a couple times. She was always very cute. She's like, I like that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday song. She didn't know the names of the songs, but she would go just to sort of support us and be part of music. And then music was always a huge part, and going to concerts was big for me in high school, college. Always loved going to see live music. So while we're sitting around telling stories about our mom, and all the concerts she took us to, and then she passed away, and like just after midnight. And then about 6 hours, I don't even know, 5-6 hours after she passed away, Ace released their new album, which I had been waiting for and expected, and was excited to hear. So that was exciting. Then I go on with the week, plan my mother's funeral, and the morning of my mother's funeral, my father's a wreck. I don't know. He's on painkillers. He does have some issues. I don't know if he took too many, whatever, but he doesn't even remember the funeral. So we have the funeral. It's lovely. People are telling stories about my mother and remembering her. And then the next day I'm supposed to fly home. So the next morning, I'm sitting here, I need to eat my oatmeal. The next morning I take my daughter to the airport because she had flown down from college. I take her to the airport, and about right when I'm pulling into the airport drop-off, I get a call from my father's caregiver. She said, did you see your father this morning? And I hadn't, because I didn't want to go wake him up. It was the morning after the funeral. My daughter had an early flight, so I just sort of left to take her to the airport. She says, well, he's fallen and he's got a bad black eye. So I drive home. He doesn't want to, but I convince him to go to the hospital. And I take him to one of the small local hospitals in Orlando, not any of the big ones. And I mean, when I say he's got a black eye, I mean, it was like, I have pictures, it's horrible. Like, he couldn't see. He's like, why can't I see? He didn't even realize he'd really fallen in the night and gotten back in bed. He had some abrasions on him. He doesn't remember any of it. But they did a scan. He had internal bleeding in his brain because he was on blood thinners. So they took him via ambulance to one of the bigger hospitals in Orlando. He was there for a while, and basically he hasn't been home since. So that, you know, obviously I didn't go home that day. Stayed till I could get him sort of situated, stable in the hospital. Arranged aftercare for him, but I did get home at some point. But it was just, it's, maybe you fast forward at this point, but long story is, it's been a long year with a lot of adulting and a lot of taking care of people, because with my father out of commission, I've got to take care of my nephew because he's still a minor. He's 17 at the time, living in a house all by himself, which presents its own series of challenges. I've got an 18-year-old son myself. The boys are 2 days apart. So there's issues there. I gotta come back home. I've gotta help my son finish school and get out, take care of everything so he can graduate. My nephew's graduating in a state far away from me. So I'm taking care of my dad, my nephew, my son, trying to take care of myself. And so when this tour was announced, I was like, you know what? Let me see what shows there are. So I'll go, and I will go see Ace as many times as I can, because they're really fun and I love live music. Their new album's great. Yeah, I'll go see them as many times as I can. And then they announce the dates, and then I sort of start, with the help of someone on Twitter, I see a calendar or a map of where everything is, and I'm like, wonder if I can go to all of them. There's 14 cities in just around 30 days, I think. So I figured out, I think I can do this. I can camp in my car for all these cities here, and there's some where I'll have to fly because it's just too far of a drive. Yeah, I'm going to use what I learned from YouTube about car camping and stealth camping, and I'm gonna go see them in every city that they're on tour for. By the end of it, they may think I'm a little crazy. And I do love them, don't get me wrong. Like, I love them like I love my students, because I got into their music through my daughter, and she had their posters on her wall, so I feel sort of like through that connection. I don't know how to explain. I love their music, I love their energy, I love how they love their fans. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm gonna connect with friends who in different cities at different stops along the way, and yeah, so this trip is a lot about self-care, and just having fun and taking care of myself for a month. Yeah. This video ended up really long. I hope it actually recorded the whole thing, because I don't want to cry again and do this again. I may cry, but I don't want to do it on camera again. I don't want the rest of the day to be a downer. I just wanted to get this video made to sort of explain this trip. And yeah, so I'm thinking of my mom on this trip, and concerts and music, and how she always wanted to travel but never could. I'm gonna travel. I'm gonna enjoy music and shows and friends. I might be a little cranky sometimes because my sleep schedule's all off. But yeah. So with that, I'm going to try to finish eating my oatmeal that I made overnight. And I've got tea ready over there, and I'm gonna hit the road, and yeah. I only have to drive an hour and a half today, and then I can get ready for the concert and be all nervous about that and enjoy that part of my day. Maybe I'll get around to editing these videos too. So, wow, it's really long. Alright, so thank you if you made it this far. People. Alright, and I will see Ace tonight, and I'll probably have giddy, fangirly videos for parts of this for later today.